But when you sign that disclaimer for all surgery that says you could be the one and don't sue us, I shouldn't have signed that form.
Welcome to Friends with Deficits. I'm your host, Adam Sultan, and it's been a long time. I took a bit of a break, almost forgot what a podcast is, but we're back with more pain, more gain, more stories. Starting off with my next guest, Garry Mason, who, as you just heard, had to sign a waiver and in the process signed away some comfort when recovering from laser eye surgery. But before we get to that, a couple pieces of business. If you'd like to sign up for our newsletter, visit friendswithdeficitspodcast.com. And, of course, as always, if you'd like to help support the show, you can visit patreon.com/friendswithdeficits and be part of the community that gets to hear some of the outtakes and have, conversations about the show, as well as really keep the show running. It takes some time, takes some money, takes some effort. And I really appreciate all the patrons who have supported the show so far. So patreon.com/friendswithdeficits. One thing to know about this conversation is that Garry was in Australia, where he lives. I was in Texas, where I live. I think it was around 10 p.m. where he was and 8 in the morning for me. He was in winter and I was in summer, however that works. So grab a drink, shut your eyes if that feels more comfortable, and don't do either of those if you're driving, and let's listen to my conversation with Garry Mason.
Friends with Deficits.
Well, I'm doing you the honour of, I've got myself a Scotch and Dry, so at least one of us can have a drink at this early hour.
Yeah, you're lucky. I was thinking I could make an Irish coffee or something, but yeah, I just had a little coffee and that's it for me. So yeah, drink for both of us. As long as you can keep talking. Where are you exactly?
I'm in my bedroom in far north Queensland, which is on the way to the top end, as we call it, the tropical climates. So I believe it's a similar sort of weather to Florida. And we're just as wacky here. The further you get away from the capital centres, it's more rural. More people do what they like.
Yeah.
And people don't wear seatbelts or have car doors and the like.
What's your nearest large city centre?
Well, there's a tourist town about an hour or so's drive from here called Cairns, which is known as the entrance to the Barrier Reef. And then about 6 or 8 hours drive is the nearest big town. It's an army town.
Have you traveled much outside of Australia?
No, I was brought up in the UK, and my mother was Austrian, so I did a fair amount of travelling on the continent and around Europe. And then we moved out here when I was about 16. I did a fair amount of travelling with, I don't know if you remember Commodore computers.
Yeah.
Back in the Apple II days. So I worked for Commodore for a long while until they died. And I got to see quite a bit of the world through them. So I used to live in Sydney with my partner for God knows how long. And then we had the .com crash and the bottom fell out of the computer industry. And I found it very hard to get a job. So we took what money we had and moved up here, probably in hindsight, maybe 10 years too early, because the jobs are few and far between up here and they don't pay as well. But we're a lot happier and a lot healthier than we were in the big city. Now I work for the local council here running their computer department.
Now, you've also had a career in theatre, is that right?
Well, it's more of a volunteer career spanning about 10 or 15 years. After I moved up here, I first got involved in the local theatre when the lighting technician was a bit too intoxicated too regularly to do the productions, and someone said, "Oh, Garry likes electronics, let's get him in." So I started with that, and I really enjoyed myself for a good while. And we do 2 or 3 big local productions a year, as well as bringing passing shows through. And my job was always just sitting behind twiddling the knobs, as I used to say.
Do you do anything on stage?
The only thing that anybody could force me to do was do a few doo-wops as a backing singer, and that was about it. Apparently, I have a perfect voice for the doo-wops.
Nice. That's cool. So I think this all started off with you getting Lasik. Is that right?
Yes, that was my prescription at that time was just on the verge of odd. So to get glasses made for me, I used to have 2 or 3 goes at getting the lenses just right because the prescription was getting just so fine. So one of the options was to have the Lasik or laser eye surgery to bring the prescription back into really normal ranges. So the Lasik solved that problem. For a while there, I didn't need glasses at all. But then, as often happens with that surgery, your stigmatism or whatever creeps back in. So within a couple of months, I was wearing glasses again.
That seems like a rip-off, right? I mean, you go through all that work and then you're back where you started, more or less? Or
if it had stopped there and my eyes got better, then I would have been a very happy person. I would have only worn glasses for reading and probably not for driving.
So how long did it last before things took a turn?
It was about 1.5 to 2 years, which apparently is about right for when people with this type of problem, with the neuropathic pain, really start to feel it. You start off getting sort of like dry eye type symptoms, like you might have had after being awake too long. Your eyes are red, they get a little bit sore, a little bit dry. That was a sort of an everyday experience. And apparently this is quite common, is that 99% of people who have this surgery, that they get a little bit of dry eye, and then after a couple of months at the most, it heals. But when you sign that disclaimer for all surgery that says you could be the one and don't sue us, I shouldn't have signed that form. It's like something like 1 in 150,000 or more. So for when I found the specialist in Brisbane, he had treated 11 other people in total with this disorder. So I felt pretty special that I found someone who knew what the hell it was, because what was happening is that people would just fob me off. That's an Australian phrase. They would just say, yes, you got that. Now just keep taking this now, go away. And that happened for about 2 years until I said, well, we need to do something a little bit more. And so the first step was then they can get these plugs that go into the drain holes in your eye, and they keep the liquid that is generated by your eye in the eye. So that helped a little bit, but the pain was still getting worse.
What do you mean by plugs?
So you think that you've got tear glands putting liquid in your eyes. There are also 4 tiny, weeny little drain holes to let the liquid out again. So it's like your windscreen wipers. Something pushes the water on your eyes, and then the drains let it out. So these tiny, leany things, like the thickness of a hair, they just plug into those holes and bung them up, just like putting a plug in the sink.
Wow.
Yeah, so I've got all 4 of those plugged up at the moment to try and keep as much liquid as I can in my eyes. So and then after that just made things a little bit better, but things were not really getting very much better at all after that. And the next complication set in, which was where the eyelid sticks to the eye at night. And then when you wake up in the morning and you open your eyes, you open, of course, your eyelid and it rips the skin off of your cornea.
Ouch.
And that is very painful. That's fetal position type pain.
Oh, my God. Was it causing permanent damage to your eyes?
The more it happens, it's like, remember, those kids who fall off their bicycles and get their knees all scabbed, and then they keep picking it and they'll end up with a scar. It's the same sort of thing. So the more you have it, the more danger there is of it going to a permanent scar that won't heal. The next treatment for that was, first of all, it's sort of topical. So at night I put this ointment in my eyes that's a bit like Vaseline, and that stops the eye sticking to the eyelids. So that was helping a fair bit.
Did that mess up your vision?
It does at night, but it'll wash out of your eyes in 15, 20 minutes in the morning.
Okay.
But the worst part of that was that I had quite a few of those for about 6 months, and it was not getting any better. So the cornea is not very secure. It's not very strong. It's got all this sort of half-healed skin on it. So the treatment for that is what they call a diamond burst superficial keratomethy, if I've pronounced that right. And essentially what they do is that they get a sander out of your dentist chair with a diamond edge on it, and they just sand away and take all the top layer of skin off of your cornea. And then in 24 hours to 48 hours, it grows back solid. And that was the painful one. I remember the guy said, I've got to try and get this needle into your eye to give you the anesthetic. And he's pointing at this, 4-inch needle and putting it near my eye. And said, look, you're not putting that anywhere near my eye without drugs. Otherwise, you're going to get bruised testicles, because I'm going to thump you if you're trying to get that needle in there. So he gave me a Valium after that, and half an hour later, I didn't know what on earth he did. Well, it was quite fine until the drugs wore off, and he told me that the pain was going to be really bad afterwards, and to go down to the chemist. And I thought, okay, well, I'll get a Nurofen or a Panadol, and that would be fine. But I got down there, I think, half an hour before the chemist shut, after the Valium had worn off, and said, look, I just need the biggest painkiller you can get. Very sore for a couple of days, and all my face went black with bruising and rather swollen. And I was a bit terrified because I wasn't expecting some of those side effects. Apparently it's quite normal. Just a very sensitive part of your anatomy, I guess. And I think I spent two or 3 days in a hotel room, so I didn't want to be around anybody, and I just had lots of podcasts to listen to. And it was pretty much fine thereafter. So that sort of put an end to those corneal erosions for a while.
How long?
For probably about a year or so. And in the meantime, I tried another treatment for the condition was these autologous, I can't pronounce it properly, serum drops. They take blood from your body. They centrifuge out all the red blood cells, and you're left with a plasma. And they make these plasma into eye drops and suggest you use them as much as you can. And the idea is because it's got your own antibodies or your own immune system in you, it'll help regenerate the eyes. But I tried that for a year and a half, and that didn't get me anywhere, so I gave up on that as well. That was specialist number 3, I think. And then I was very lucky, and in 2015, when things were pretty bad for me, I was still had a lot of pain, and my dry eyes were not very good condition because no one had told me to look after them.
4 years of this going off and on.
Yeah, and it was just not getting any better. And funnily enough, someone said to me, you should try this optometrist on the way to Cairns. He deals in all the difficult cases. And when I visited him, he was the first person who just sat me down and said, let's start from the beginning. Are you doing the basics? Are you cleaning your eyes? Are you massaging them? Are you doing these things? And no one had ever told me about I needed to learn how to look after myself again. When normal people tear, it cleans their eyes. By that time, my eyes were, I get mucus in them in the afternoons. There'd be little crunchy things forming on the side, and they would be red and sore as hell. Anyway, he turned me around by showing me how at least to clean my eyes and look after them. And he put me in touch with a specialist in Brisbane, who was the guy who actually figured out the nature of what I had, which apart from the things that the dry eye had caused, things like the oil glands weren't working so well, and that's why it was causing the dry eye. But the main thing that had settled in was this neuropathic pain, That was probably the worst part of it. So from the moment you get up, you're getting this neuropathic pain. Corneal hyperalgesia, it's called. But if it's a fancy name for just you wake up and your eyes are sore or burning. At the worst, they feel like they've got something in them. When things are at my worst and they're not being treated, I'd be leaving parties early, or I'd feel like I had something in my eye and I'd have to go and sit in the car and pour saline in my eye to try and get rid of the sensation. But it's just something I dealt with all day long. It's not going away. I'll give you an idea. So the local guy that I visited, he's got another patient, a mother of twins, and she's just started having these corneal abrasions, where the eyelid sticks to the eye. And she said to him that she would rather give birth to twins again than carry on suffering with these.
Wow.
So it was good to know that what I thought was really painful, she also thought was really painful.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't just a big girl.
Right.
Yeah. And then you got a bit hopeless there for a while, where I just wasn't interested in doing anything or pursuing anything more. It was more of, I really just can't be bothered with this anymore, and was sort of looking for a way out if things weren't going to improve. And I used to just say, okay, well, I'm going to give it another 6 months. We'll give it another 6 months and see what this new avenue or new doctor or new treatment is going to give, and then I'll reevaluate it from there. And then when I got to that milestone, I try and think of another milestone in another 6 months that I could just aim for. Christmas. I want to make it to Christmas because I'll see family and friends again. It's really dark sort of stuff that you think about when the chips are down, really. I mean, there was a time when I did write my goodbye note, and I'd thought of how I was going to do it, so that if the pain did get too great or I couldn't take it anymore, I'd already had a plan and I knew how to execute it.
Wow.
But it was good knowing that the plan was there if I needed it. But it never got that bad. I always found a way of thinking about something else and trying not to be so selfish in a way.
Did you share that with anyone?
Once my partner found the letter, and we had a brief conversation about it. But luckily, by the time he found the note, the time I was thinking about using it had passed. So it was easier to talk about.
Had you felt that way before in your life, before any of these symptoms happened?
No, never.
Could you sleep through it?
Or at least shutting the eye would help. So that's when I gave up reading and started getting into podcasts and things, so I could close my eyes and still carry on. I'd sort of given up the theatre by then because that was just too hard trying to read a script. I put drops in my eye every 30 seconds to a minute and then twiddle knobs at the same time. That was just too hard.
So you're spending a lot of time with your eyes closed when you can?
Before I got the treatment plan underway, then yes, I was really looking for times to minimise when I kept my eyes open. Or I'd often sit have people over, I'd sit at the table with my eyes closed and just carry on talking like that. Admittedly, I still use that as a bit of an excuse for the conversation's boring.
Do you drive, or did you drive?
I do drive. A lot of people don't like driving with me. It just freaks people out because I look for a clear piece of traffic and I'll put drops in one eye, look at the ceiling, back on the road, look for another piece of clear road, do the other eye. And of course you can imagine that doesn't make passengers feel very comfortable when the driver's not actually looking at the road.
I bet. I have written down the meibomian gland disease.
Yes.
Have you already touched on that, or is that?
That was sort of, I think, my personal viewpoint is that when the dry eye settled in, and without being told how to look after my eyes, those glands, was it meibomian? There's the oil glands they gave up. So I've got I think about 6 or 8 that are dead out of my allotted, 20 or 30 or whatever it is. And so they're the ones that produce the oil that stop your eyes from drying out. And then there's a related condition called blepharitis, which is where everything sort of starts getting inflamed and red because of all the other stuff that's going on. So I've got a bit of both of those going on at the same time. But mainly it's the pain that's the worst thing. The neuropathic pain is something that just doesn't go away. Because I guess back on the story was that, so once I found this guy who put me onto another specialist in Brisbane who knew what it was, he recommended a treatment plan which was getting these enormous contact lenses. They actually sit on the whites of the eye, not your pupils. And they have a vaulted area which is like a big bowl.
Are those the scleral lenses?
Yes, I'm glad you can pronounce that.
I think it's scleral.
Perfect pronunciation. I just can't do that after 2 scotches. And inside that, they put a little drop of a drug called lacosamide, which is they've used it in people who have epilepsy and people with brain seizures because it calms nerves down. And the idea is that I'm wearing these lenses and I've had 1 batch of treatment with this drug and it's calmed the nerves down and they've been able to regrow. Or at least the ones in the right eye have. And then I'm going to have another batch of this same treatment for 5 months in the left, to try and treat the left-hand lens.
And you wear them every single day now?
Yes, absolutely. They're the things that keep the pain away because they keep the eye moist.
But you're also applying drops all the time?
Yes, the tearing's still not back to normal yet. So I'll probably be tearing with bits of plastic all my life. You get these little ampules. You probably get about 3 or 4 drops out of an ampule. And I go for about 2 boxes of 30 a day. So it's quite a bit. I'm very lucky that I live in a country that has mostly a public healthcare system, so I'm getting a lot of these drugs through that.
Yeah, so lucky. I was actually just going to think, that sounds expensive. Maybe not where you are.
Yeah, I mean, for the first 5 years, I wasn't aware that this stuff, because it's only over the counter, you don't need a prescription from a doctor to buy eye drops, so I was just buying these over the counter. It wasn't for until about 4 or 5 years that someone said, well, you should be able to get these from your doctor, even though that they're not a restrictive drug. So I was very glad to find a doctor and a chemist who was able to help me get what I needed. So after I did that, I worked out in the first 5 years, I'd spent something like $72,500 on stuff for my eye. And that's without visiting the doctors or the travel. Just,
wow,
drops and ointments and bits and pieces. But anyway, that's here we are now. So now we've got to a position of steady and stable, I guess. So a lot of people have said to me, well, why aren't you suing the doctors? And why aren't you doing some sort of class action or something? I think, well, that's very negative territory. And I don't have either the money or the mental inclination for it. I don't think it's healthy for me. I like to concentrate on what's positive and what's moving forward and getting back to doing the things that I liked or like doing.
Have you found other people who have this?
Not locally, but through the internet, there's a fair bit of a community going on there. And I think one of the good things about those communities is you also get to see that you're not alone and probably a lot better off than some people. There's always someone worse off than yourself.
I have a question that I ask people on the podcast about the possible benefits of what you're going through or have gone through.
Yeah, I was thinking about that earlier, and I think one of the good things is that I do have a built-in excuse for any conversations that's utterly boring. I can just tune out and say, sorry, I have to go and change my contact lenses now. Or I'm just going to sit here and shut my eyes for a minute, and I can just tune out. So it is a very good excuse generator. But other than that, and I guess being a bit of an introvert, it does give me a bit more latitude to have quiet time and read by myself or whatever. But no, there's not that many benefits. It's more adaptive. I'm very pleased with how I've slowly adapted to do things. So, for example, if you ever see me gardening, I'll be wearing swimming goggles because I just can't afford to get anything in my eye.
Is the environment there, does it have any like pollen or dust or anything you have to worry about?
We have a sugar mill in the town, and of course they also occasionally burn the sugarcane fields, so that does generate a bit of smog and smoke, but that's not too bad. What I really do notice is the difference between the dry and the wet season. Being a tropical climate, in summer here we do get rain every day and it's very hot and humid, and then the dry season comes, and of course that makes my eyes even worse. It's a bit of a pros and cons because not being summer, we don't have air conditioning running. So in summer, when we've got the air conditioning running, that dries the air out inside. So there's just no escaping it. But you just learn to adapt. So I always try and buy shirts now that have a top pocket. So I've got somewhere to put my eye drops. These new contact lenses I'm wearing are really good, and they don't go walkabout. The ones I had for the first couple of years were they would move, and occasionally I'd have to take them out at very short notice. So that meant carrying around a bag with a mirror and some, all the stuff I needed to get the stuff out of my eyes and possibly put them back in again.
How is your vision right now?
The reading and so on is actually pretty good. I'm now 55, so you do expect your vision to get worse with age, but I can still read perfectly and so on. I first of all wear the spherical lenses, and they do a partial correction on my vision and take away the pain. And then I wear what they call overglasses that fine-tune the vision and give me the reading quality. So it's a bit bizarre.
Yeah.
That's the funny thing, is it's the vision quality as soon as I had the operation was fantastic and always has been fantastic. It's just been this unexpected pain that came along afterwards. And I know that's not normal, it's not for everybody, but when it does happen, it's pretty debilitating until you learn to deal with it. I read in your little bio there that you're also heavily into meditation.
Yep. That is true.
I found that a good trick to do a bit of meditation to bring things back into perspective.
Oh, that's good. Do you practice regularly?
I must admit, I started with a certain app, and they also do sleep stories. And now I'm addicted to sleep stories more than I am the meditation.
It's a lot easier. That's funny. What have I missed? Any other things you want to talk about that you haven't yet?
No, I think sometimes you talk about having a sealed section. Playing in the bedroom can be a bit of a. It all just comes down to planning again, because I've still got to use my eye drops and all of that sort of stuff while we're messing around. Nothing is spontaneous. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to get my act together. Yes, I'm going to have a shower. I guess I'm going to do this, that, and the other, but I've got to make sure my eye drops are close to me. And just hold there. I'm just going to have one more eye drop. Yep, and now I can carry on again.
Has that affected your relationship? Is your partner okay with everything?
He's been pretty supportive, but it's like anything. The only person who can really experience it is the person who's going through it.
Yeah.
Occasionally we'll have tiffs over it. I know your eye's sore, but we promised that we would go out. So, come along, get your act together. There is a natural tendency when you get ill to want to be away from people, to sort of suffer in silence. Mm-hmm. And that is a bit of a negative spiral in itself. So I'm very lucky that my partner is more of an extrovert than I am. Otherwise, I probably would have even less friends now. we have let a few things drop in the last couple of years, but we still have a healthy social life. And I think that's important to do so.
Yeah, that's good.
One of the reasons I'd love to get back into the theatre is, all that contact with people. It's good for you, even though you don't feel like it at the time. You have to sort of push yourself a little bit.
What's your level of pain are you in now, or are you in any?
I'd say 2 or 3 in the left, bugger all in the right eye.
Right. I guess that's
pretty good.
Doesn't sound too bad. After having been through all this, would you recommend Lasik to anybody?
I think I would recommend it to young people on the basis that there's less chance of things going wrong the younger you are with any surgery. But I wouldn't do it for cosmetic reasons. That's just not good enough. I know in America you've got nuclear power stations, but I always think the risk is too high to have those sorts of things in your suburb. If you can do without it, do without it. It's certainly been a learning experience, or growth. What do they call it? A growth experience?
Uh-huh.
I was quite a selfish person beforehand, and concentrating on my own bits and pieces, and wasn't into meditating and wasn't really interested in what other people were going through. I'm certainly a lot more sensitive now to understanding what other people may be going through with things in their lives. It's like sometimes I hear of people who get debilitating diseases. They go through like a realization about themselves and others, and I think I'm the better for that in many ways of understanding more about both how lucky I am and about what others must be feeling when they're going through bad times. Have a lot more empathy now, I think. I think, as you say, for me it's been a matter of just keeping milestones, positive milestones, every step of the way to keep going and not hide away from people. It would have been very easy to hide away from people and just stew in my own misery.
Do you have any future big life plans or things going on?
I would like to get back to the theatre and possibly just do a little bit more travelling, because the first couple of years I didn't want to travel as well. There was just too much to travel with, too much product to pack, and needed to have a sterile environment for cleaning all the eye stuff. It was just too hard. So I'd like to get into seeing travelling again.
That sounds good. Yeah, I hope you were able to soon.
Well, lovely meeting you and chatting with you.
You too.
I'd like to also thank you very much for the work you've been doing to date. It's been really great series, very inspirational.
Thanks.
I don't know how you find all these wonderful people, but they're all kicking on.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. I love doing this work. Did you hear him? He loves doing this work. Wait, that's me. Yeah, and I do. I love doing this work. And I'd love for you to help support it. So don't forget about Patreon, patreon.com/friendswithdeficits, where for any size contribution, one time or ongoing, you can help support the show and make sure we keep bringing great guests, great stories, and all the entertainment your heart desires. It's not found on any other podcast in the universe. Once again, I'd like to thank my guest, Garry Mason, and thank you for listening. Check us out on our website at friendswithdeficitspodcast.com. I know it's a mouthful. I still need to get an alias for that. And be sure to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and of course, subscribe, review, listen wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Adam Sultan, encouraging you to focus on the positive.